Welcome to the Performance Collective, where I bring together experts across the running, fitness, and human performance space to share insights, experiences, and practical strategies for improving performance. Hosted by me, Hannah Witt, a USCA certified running coach and athlete success and operations manager, this podcast features conversations with elite athletes, coaches, nutritionists, chiropractors, race directors, and industry leaders. Whether you're chasing a personal best, returning from injury, or looking to better understand the science behind training and recovery, the Performance Collective offers actionable insights to help you train smarter and perform at your best. It has been a hot minute since I updated the Performance Collective with any kind of podcasts, and that's because life has been a bit much. But today is a wonderful episode with Bob Brashear. Bob is 67 years young. He's still lining up for some of the toughest races in the world, including Badwater 135, Hellbender 100, Georgia Death Race, and so many others. Bob's story starts in Harlan, Kentucky, where he was one of 10 children. Hard work was simply a way of life. After serving in the Marine Corps and building a career in customer service, he began running marathons. He didn't discover trail running until he was 50 years old. Since then, he's become one of the most respected and consistent runners in the ultra running community. He is one of the most humble, grittiest people that I've had the pleasure of talking with, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy this episode.
I'm excited to talk to you, Bob, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Hannah, for inviting me to come. Yes, I do love running. I absolutely love the running community. It's one of the few things that I do that in my life today that really challenges me, and that's probably the element I love the most and why I have run more 100-mile races than any other distance, is because no matter the terrain, no matter the conditions, it's always a challenge to complete a 100-mile race. And I love that spot that you get to where you are challenged to push through that and keep going. And it's an exhilarating feeling when you do it.
Wow, that's really inspirational. Before we started recording the podcast, Bob and I were talking about his race this weekend. What was the name of it again, Bob?
It's called the Massanutten 100, and it's in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley there.
That sounds beautiful.
Basically, the race, you climb to the top of the mountain, you run along the ridge, a lot of rocks, very technical. Then you come down to the aid station and you just continue to do that throughout the race. It's always coming down to the aid, going back up to the top of the mountain, but it's extremely beautiful there.
It sounds like it. I used to be in northeastern Tennessee, but now I'm in western North Carolina. So I did a lot of racing in Virginia, and it's a beautiful state. You mentioned that you got about 3/4 of the way through the race, right? And you started to lean a little bit to one side, and you've had that condition.
Yes. I think the first time it ever happened to me was at the finish of the Badwater 135. And I didn't really experience a lot of extreme pain from it. I just noticed that I was leaning very bad when me and my team came across the finish line. And I have a few friends that are PTs, and it's a condition called quadratus lumborum, and it's like the deep abdominal muscle that connects to the lowest rib and the lumbar vertebrae to the pelvic bone. It gets stressed from overuse. I'm sure all that climbing and using those trekking poles over a period of time eventually caused it to get weak. And I was really leaning very badly. It happened to me at the Cocodona 250. and I got to mile 91 a few years ago and had to drop from the race. It was so extreme.
Well, you saying that, when you mentioned it before we started recording, I immediately thought of something neurological. So the fact that the PTs are saying quadratus lumborum, kind of that muscle group area there in your low back, and your abdominal area also, because it all supports each other, that makes me feel a lot better, because I was thinking of like vertigo. I was thinking of runner's dystopia, which Kara Goucher, for example, I think it wasn't recent diagnosis, but I think within the last decade, she was diagnosed with runner's dystopia, which is this like neurological condition that makes you feel just not balanced while you're running. And I'm not able to give you the exact diagnosis, but it's definitely neurological and affects your ability to just stay balanced. And to me, it almost sounded like vertigo. And I've had a little bit of experience with vertigo, and I tell you, it's crazy, because I moved up to a higher altitude than I was used to, and I feel like it affected my inner ear, just the whole homeostatic mechanism within my inner ear. So I'm really glad that that's not what's happening to you. But do you do anything in your strength training to kind of target that specific area? You're saying you're leaning to one side. I'm thinking the side that you weren't leaning towards. So the stretch side is probably the weak side, because you're almost putting more load on that side that's more dominant for you. Is that what you've experienced? Or
yes. And I do have some stretching routines that help strengthen that, as well as doing some time on a stair climber seems to help as well. And I have two different back issues. I have another one that's a disc problem. In the last few years, in January, I've gone and gotten a epidural steroid shot in my spine, and they seem to last for a year, which is good, because I can continue to use those. If it ever gets to the point where that time length, minimizes, then that they'll probably not want to do that for me anymore.
Well, I'm so glad that it's helping you. I personal train older clients, and they've tried that before, and it hasn't necessarily worked, but I'm so glad that's working for you. And I will say that the older people that I've worked with, their balance, their strength, just the atrophy that they've experienced, you are an absolute enigma in my mind, because you're so incredibly active, and you're performing better and doing more races than people who are, half your age, less than half your age. And that's really inspiring. Did you, talk about your upbringing? Were you always a very active person? Did you always have a passion for running?
Well, I grew up in a large family of 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. And what's ironic was Mom and Dad had a 7, a 5, and a 4-year-old. And Dad went off to work one day, and Mom went into labor. And one of the neighbors rushed her to the hospital, and she had triplets.
Oh my. What a shock when Dad got home.
To tell a story how his family doubled on him one day while he was at work.
Were your parents aware that she was carrying triplets before she had them?
No.
That would be a shock.
Yes.
Triplets in your family?
I grew up on a small farm in the mountains there in Kentucky, and so I spent a lot of time in the mountains, hiking, camping, over the years. And we had, we worked on the farm. We had an apple orchard. We had hay pastures, raised cattle and horses. And so there was always a lot of work to do. And I was always very active, as well as competitive with 4 other brothers. I don't think we ever played a game of Monopoly that the board didn't get flipped sometime during the day.
Funny. Well, I didn't know you were from Kentucky. My mother's family's actually from like the Winchester, Lexington area, so Clark County and Eastern Kentucky. We've driven up through there to visit, and that's beautiful, beautiful country. We would play Patty Loveless on the way, so definitely love that part of the state.
Yeah, when I was in high school, we would skip school occasionally and take a trip to Red River Gorge during the day, which is a beautiful area as well. It has a natural bridge there, and it's a lot of great hiking in there. I stop there every chance I get when I'm in that area and park on the trailhead and run a couple hours.
That sounds idyllic. Are you still in that area? It sounds like you're not.
I live just across the river from Cincinnati.
Okay.
Just moved. I moved it in December of 2018, 3 miles from where I lived before. Well, where I lived before, you could hear the fireworks when the Reds would hit a home run. I can't do that now that I moved out 3 miles, but I still go down and run my old running route where I used to live every Friday.
Are there extensive trail systems up there?
We have a few. There's a couple in Ohio. There's Mount Airy Forest that's actually within the city limits. That's a great trail system. There's a place called East Fork Lake that's on the east side of Cincinnati. And then right where I used to work, I just retired April the 2nd. We had a place called Idlewild Park that had a whole series of bike trails that I would go run a couple times a week after work.
That sounds nice. You obviously, all the racing that you do, you keep the roads hot, so you must travel a lot.
Yeah, we have a running group here in Cincinnati. That's a Facebook group, and it's a kind of a play on words. We're called the Studs. And everybody, when I say that, laughs until I tell them what it stands for. Slowly training for ultra distances.
I love it.
And you can get on and post that you're going to run Saturday morning in a certain area and people will show up. And then you put your races on a calendar, and the weekend before your race, they'll post who's running, and then you'll get words of encouragement from other people in your group. And they make a lot of jokes about the amount of running that I do. So that's funny as well. They've learned how to use AI, so they use my image and make all kinds of funny on the page as well.
When it comes to like Facebook running groups like that, is it a closed Facebook group or is it public?
It's public.
Okay. I always think if I was to join a Facebook running group like that and you're encouraged to say, I'm going to run at this trail tomorrow. It's like, what if somebody unsavory shows up at my location tomorrow? And I mean, I'm 5'9", so I feel like I can take care of myself, but that almost makes me feel a little scared being that open about where.
Yeah, it's not public in that way. You do have to join the group. And there's administrators, and I'm not sure what kind of vetting process or what they have for everybody, but we've never, in the history that I've been with the group, ever had an issue with that. We've had some issues with just being out on the trail and them encountering, people that wanted to cause them harm, but never as a result of showing up from our post on the group.
Well, I mean, you've run a lot of races from what I researched as far as what's the website, ultrarunning.com. It looked like you began in 2011. Was that your official start or were you doing ultras before then?
No, I was a road marathoner up until then. I just I had turned 50 And I remember I was eating lunch with a couple friends, and I told them, I may just give up this running thing, maybe ratchet back and do a couple 5 or 10 Ks. And my sister was involved in a race in the mountains there in Kentucky. She's an attorney in Harlan, Kentucky, and in the race, they have this weekend every year where all the local artisans bring their crafts to the mall and display them. And this race was going to be a part of that. It was called the Mountain Masters. It was a 16-mile trail race, and they put you on a bus, took you up. You ran to the top of the mountain along the ridge, and then you came down, and the race finished in a little park called Kingdom Come State Park. And so they called it the Run to Kingdom Come. And I did it for a few years. They don't have it anymore, but it introduced me to trail running, and I fell in love with it immediately. But
Imagine.
and I've done maybe 50 marathons. I've done the Boston Marathon 10 times. I was there the year they had the explosions to finish. It kind of shook me. I didn't go back for 6 years after that. My family was there. Actually, we had made an agreement just to meet back at the hotel. We were staying in the Fairmont Copley, which is right at the finish line. And but when I came up on to Bolston to start down the straight to the finish, my family recruited all these people to cheer for me. And I turned the corner and I heard all these people yell. I thought, who is that? Well, they had been standing there for a couple hours, so they'd made signs. But right where they were standing, of course, they had gone on, and I met them back in the room. Was where across the street from where they were standing, is where the second explosion happened.
That's so terrifying.
Just the timing, just luckily I finished 45 minutes prior to the first explosion, and I was going up on the elevator and it shook the building a little bit. And they locked us in the hotel for 4 hours because there was a lot of elite runners and running teams in that hotel, and they weren't sure who these guys were trying to target or who was doing this. So
That's awful, and you, like you said, you didn't go back for 6 years. I'm sure that probably was the last time a lot of people ran Boston, because that was such a horrifying event.
yeah.
So you transitioned from road running marathons.
Yeah, so I did that shorter trail race, and it didn't take me very long at all to do my first 50K after that. And then I just kind of transitioned from 50. My next race was a 60K. Then I did 100K, working my way up to 100-miler.
So, are we talking a span of years for you working up from that first 16-mile trail race in Harlem to doing your first 100-miler, or was that a pretty quick transition?
That race was, I did it the first time, I think in I want to say 2005. It was in November. And so I didn't do my first ultra until, I want to say 2009. So it was a 4-year period there, but I was doing shorter trail running in my area, and some shorter trail races up until then. Still marathoning though, and I still haven't given up road running at all.
So you were training for road running and trail running simultaneously. Did you find that switching surfaces, running on asphalt concrete versus running on whatever trail surface, did that help you with training? Did you ever feel like you were detracting from one or the other, depending on your focus?
To be honest with you, and I've talked to some of my closer running friends about this, I seem to think it may be a hidden secret that me mixing those two up has kept me from being injured. I've had plantar fasciitis twice. I ran the whole time I had it, both times. I have never been injured, had an injury that kept me from running.
That's amazing. Wow, you've never had any bone injuries or
No.
anything. Wow, that's
I just think I know that trail running definitely helped my marathoning because I did the New York City Marathon, and I'd been doing a lot of trail running up till that point. I just started doing some of the longer distance ultras, and it really helped my time. I ran like a 3:30 something, and I hadn't done that in a few years.
wow. What do you think? What aspect of trail running kind of helped you become quicker in the marathon? Would you think like foot speed? Would it be using different muscles because you're not moving unilaterally, right? You're kind of shifting as you navigate different trail obstacles.
I think so, and I think just the climbing, because a lot of my ultra running has been, as you've seen from my history, I really like to do the mountain ultras. That it stabilized certain muscles, and then when I was on the flat and wasn't climbing, I just wanted to open up. I wanted to run faster.
So this
I
race,
still do a flat race every year called Tunnel Hill 100. I'm sure you've heard of it. There's been world records set there before. This year was my 10th time doing that. I got a 1,000-mile buck. Well, I hold the most miles on the Tunnel Hill Trail. My first 8 years were all sub 24. And then 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when my back started to have problems, then I didn't have the capability to run the sub 24 anymore.
so many of these races that you've done multiple times, right?
Just that race.
Just that one. Okay.
I've
I was going to say,
I've got 2 races that I've gone back and attempted twice and have not gotten a finish. One of them was the Hurt 100, gone there in Hawaii, and UTMB in France. I've gone twice. And the first time I got to mile 78, I fell coming down the mountain toward the aid station and broke my trekking pole. So I only had one pole left with still a lot of climbing left. And I was beat up and battered pretty badly. And I didn't purchase the rescue insurance. And so they told me if I went on and they had to come in and rescue me, I would have to pay for that rescue. So I dropped at 78 because they had a shuttle there to take you back to the start line.
I didn't know that there was such a thing as rescue insurance in ultra running.
Yes, and I bought it the second time I went back. But the second time I went back was when I started to experience the back issues, and I made it to the 100K mark in that race and didn't make the cutoff. Wasn't fast enough because my back was slowing me down.
So those 2 races, the one in Hawaii, the UTMB one, the limiting factors there was your back.
Yes.
That is so frustrating. Wow.
What is frustrating about it is I didn't start ultra running until I was in my early 50s. And now I want to do all these, I want to do the tough races, but my body's not capable, I don't think. I know last year when I ran Hellbender, which you're probably familiar with, I got to the finish line and the race staff said there's been this buzz all day about the old man in pink. I always wear pink in my races. And they said, well, we hope you don't mind. We jumped on your ultra sign up page and we were astounded. But we wanted to let you know that you're the oldest finisher in the history of our race. They said a couple years ago we had a guy 64 finish, and we all thought nobody will ever top that. And I was 66 last year when I ran it. I just turned 67 in April of this year.
Oh, congratulations on your turning 67 and also your recent retirement. That's got to be exciting. I find it amazing that you were still working and hadn't retired yet. We're doing all these races. Do you mind me asking what your line of work was?
I was a customer service manager, and I loved my customers so much. And what happened was I was not a part of the sales team at all. Our sales is done out of a Spokane, Washington office. And just by word of mouth and telling a lot of running stories about hallucinating, I ended up with all these. I ended up with 15 direct customers, which really I didn't realize made my workload a lot more extreme, but I just loved spending time with them, and they know all about my running antics. And I know back 5 years ago when I was 62 and I ran Badwater, they were making bets on whether I would finish or not. They're like, you're gonna end up dead in the desert, old man. You can't finish that race.
So you said something about hallucinating and sharing stories about that, and I'm guessing during these races, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for Badwater, let's just talk about that. You mentioned this race you did this weekend being super, super technical. Badwater, to me, isn't very technical, right? It's more pure gutting it out with horrendous elements. So those seem diametrically opposed in my mind in terms of difficulty, yes, but very, very different in their level or in their type of difficulty.
Yes, very much so. Badwater's all run on the highway. I know when we were going down into Panamint Springs, which I didn't realize until I did some history after I had gotten picked to run the race, that they filmed the desert scene in the first Star Wars movie down in there's a huge wide sandbar that runs through the valley there in Panamint Springs. And
That's cool.
it got up to 122 when we were down in the valley there, and they'd just resurfaced the highway, brand new blacktop.
How awful.
So I was trying to run on the white line as much as I could to keep my shoes from melting. But
yeah, you don't ever think about footwear and how footwear affects the asphalt that is far hotter than the ambient temperature, right? So 122 degrees. I don't even know. I mean, they've measured asphalt temperatures, I'm sure, but do you know off the top of your head what that looked like?
I don't know what the actual temperature of the blacktop was, but I know there was a lot of what I'll call carnage going through the valley. That I took a friend of mine who was a fire chief in one of the local towns here where I live, Gary, and he's EMT. And so they had him run with me through that area, but there was a lot of people suffering. I know I had one little time right at the top of Towns Pass, which is the first huge climb, where I got on the edge of heat exhaustion, and they put me in the van, packed around my neck with ice, turned all the air conditioning vents toward me, and and brought me back down, and I never experienced any other problems after that. Now, I did buy a infrared sauna to prepare for Badwater, and I still use it. Last week, knowing it was going to be in the 80s at Massanutten, I was getting in there. I got in there 4 times last week. I do an hour at 140 degrees, which seems to work. Now, for Badwater, I did 2 months of heat training. The first month, I did 45 minutes at 140, and then the month leading up to Badwater, I did an hour at 140, and I only missed 2 days out of that whole 2 months. So it was a game changer for me.
Is this, when you're in the sauna, is it passive heat training? Are you just like sitting in there?
I'm just sitting in there, and there were a couple times I wore a sauna suit inside
Wow.
the sauna, and it's one of those that have the elastic around the legs and the arms. I could just pull that thing open and water would just flood out. I have to line the whole thing with towels when I go in there because the water just pours off, and I take, of course, fluids in there to drink.
I was going to ask, to make sure that you're staying hydrated, electrolytes are staying balanced. Do you do any kind of like weighing yourself before you start heat training, weighing yourself after to see how much water loss you had, understand how much you should replace?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
What did that look like typically? How much were you losing in there?
Well, I can lose 3 pounds in that 1 hour. I know in some of my 100-milers, I've lost 7 to 9 pounds before. But it seems like now at my age, in my 60s, I don't lose nearly that much. And I have a cast iron stomach, so I eat very well, solid food throughout the race. It's one of the things that helps me run at altitude is most people will get altitude sickness and they get nauseated and they can't hold down fluids or nutrition. And I don't have that issue. I'm dizzy a little bit, but I can still drink and eat, which helps me propel to the finish line.
That's really interesting. A lot of people, like you said, they get altitude sickness, and I've heard that it's genetic as to how your constitution handles altitude. Whether you're going to be able to adapt and, just become a better athlete from it. Some people, they go and do altitude training and it doesn't really affect them because genetically they're not predisposed to have their body become, better from that particular training. But it sounds like your genes are stacked in the right direction to make that work for you.
Yeah, I mean I went out a couple of years ago. I flew out to to run flew into Denver and rented a car. I rented an electric car because I'd never driven one. I just wanted to try one out, and drove over to Fairplay. And Fairplay, as a crow flies, it's probably 20 miles from Leadville. But to drive it, you have to go up and down or down and back up. But the town sits at 9,000 and something. And the race, the 100-miler, Silver Hills 100, takes you up over 12 4 times. But you never come back down below 9. So you don't really, in some of these races out in Colorado, you'll get to come back down to around 6,000 and get a little bit of relief. I think it's what makes Leadville so tough is that you never really come back below that 10,000 mark to get any kind of relief.
When you say get relief, you mean like feel like you can really fill your lungs with oxygen, or?
Yes. I get just a little dizzy. I know I went out several years ago to attempt to do the Ure 100, which is similar to Hard Rock. And I ended up dropping at mile 55 because I had a reoccurring knee issue, and I was getting ready to fly to France to do UTMB, and I didn't want to gamble with that. But that race, you go up. We were up to 12,000 and something, and you had to punch your bib. I bent down to grab the punch. They had it chained to a little post, and I almost went out. I got so dizzy. But that race brings you back down to 6,000-7,000 several times during the race.
Do you have a preference for what kind of racing environment you perform in? Do you prefer, it sounds like you prefer mountains, but do you enjoy desert? Do you enjoy more what we offer here in southeastern United States? Sounds like Europe, the terrain, the Alps is different, but the way, I know there's a lot of climbing. I've not been, but obviously you've raced on a lot of different landscapes. Do you have a preference?
Yes, my favorite racing is single track mountain racing here in the East. Our races, I think, here in the East are much more technical than out in California, Colorado. Just they don't have near the rocks and roots that we have here, I don't think. And the majority of your elite runners that do very well that are running out west, if you do a little background on them, they came from the East at some point and moved out there, like Speed Goat, of course. Carl, who has the most 100-mile wins, grew up in New Hampshire. And at some point, he moved out to Utah and just stayed out there.
So you think kind of the terrain here being tougher definitely lend itself to them performing well, where the terrain isn't necessarily as hard, but obviously you have to contend with things like altitude.
Yes. Yeah, but I think once you move there and you get acclimated to that altitude, they don't seem to have that issue. For me, what I try to do is get into the area as close to the race as I can, so it doesn't affect me as much, and then do my race. We have a friend. I have a friend that's in our running group that did Hard Rock a couple years ago, and she bought one of those hints that you put on your bed, and she rented it and used that, and she got to finish it Hard Rock.
Do you think you would ever try that?
I've applied for the lottery a few times, but I'm sure it would be difficult at my age. But I try not to let my age limit me from trying. I never know. I'm just a person who thinks if all the stars align, I could get a finish almost anywhere. So, and I don't want to limit myself by thinking that I can't complete something because of my age.
Well, what are your top 5 dream races that you'd like to complete?
Well, I'd love to be able to complete UTMB and hurt, but those are expensive races to keep going to do if you don't complete them. In the East, I've done a lot. I would love to go up and run in the White Mountains, in New Hampshire area. Some of the trails there in New York. That's one area I haven't had the opportunity yet to run in.
That's interesting because yesterday I had a chat with John Kelly. I'm sure you know who he is.
Very much.
Yeah, he was talking about his experience working towards the fastest known time on the Appalachian Trail. And he mentioned that he was near, I guess, the White Mountains, and his ankles just stopped working, and he's had problems with them ever since. And yeah, that sounds like that is very, very technical up there. I'm not personally been, but just from the way he was describing it and what he experienced, that sounds tough.
Yes, because I think here, even like the race that I met your sister in, Grayson Highlands 50 mile, there's a lot of rocks in that race as well. But they're the ones I think up there in the White Mountains are not the smaller type of rocks that we experience here in the South. They're more of the big boulder climbing over type rocks. So it makes it even more challenging. But I followed John as he did his attempt on the AT, and it was pretty exciting because he would always post something every night at how he was doing.
Right. And he mentioned how he was doing it to help with Hurricane Helene relief. And that's always nice to hear. And, you know, when we evacuated from Hurricane Helene, we actually were driving up West Virginia mostly to get to where we need to go because everything west of that was in shambles, decimated from Hurricane Helene. Did your family fare okay? Your family in Eastern Kentucky?
Yes, it didn't come through where they live. It was further east, but I had no idea of the damage until I drove down to do Hellbender. And of course, they had 40 closed, so you had to do a reroute to how you would normally go. And it took the way the GPS took me was down the east side of Asheville, and I could not believe the damage.
Oh yeah, Asheville got hit so bad.
And then in my race, I mean, you're on top of the mountain and you're running along. You may be on a small fire road, and just the whole mountain came down, took all the trees with it. I mean, they had gone in and made a way that you could reroute around where the mountain had slipped off. I just could not believe the damage that was done. And of course, Mount Mitchell, I don't think it has reopened yet from all that.
I was going to ask you how the Grayson Highlands, how that looked after Hurricane Helene. Did it look like you could
still see the damage? It's kind of unbelievable how just devastating that was.
Yeah, but I'm glad your family is okay. That was really tough time. But yeah, do you have Western States coming up in June, correct? Do you?
Yes.
Hopefully you don't have anything between now and then since that's really close. But how are you feeling about that?
I feel good. I've done even though I didn't complete Massanutten over the weekend, that 78 miles was some great training. I think for Western States. And then I did a race called Warbird that was a new race here in Eastern Kentucky that as well was great training back in March. I did go down and do a flat 100-miler on a paved trail in Alabama, just because I knew a few people that had done it, and I hadn't run very much in that area, so I went and did that. I will probably do. There's a local 100K in not a couple hours from here, close to Bloomington, Indiana, that I may attempt to do on the 5th of June. The Western States is on the 27th of June, so that'll give me plenty of time to recover. And I just tell people at my age, I'm afraid if I stop, I may seize up and it may all be over.
I was going to ask you, how do you possibly recover in between these races that are spaced so close together?
Well, I've adapted to this process of running an ultra every month, and then I don't have to do any training for ultras. I used to run an hour every day, except I would run 3 hours on the street on Saturday and 3 hours on the trail on Sunday, and then an hour all the other days. And then after I've retired now, I've got to be careful because I've been doing 2 hours every day, and I'm starting to feel a little overuse on
Oh,
my
you don't want
knees.
that. I know if, I don't know, we have a break or something from work, I have more free time, I'm very tempted to do more training and I end up regretting it. But, you should be able to enjoy your time and do exactly what you want to do. Just be sensible about making sure that you're looking after yourself.
Yes, I don't. The people in my running group are absolutely amazed because I've never. Most people get overuse injuries for running the amount of running that I do. Now, it could have a lot to do with I'm not a very fast or elite runner. I'm, a back of the packer, probably at my age now, and but I don't normally ever get injured. And I do this thing where, like, I ran the 100 miler um, this weekend and dropped at 78 on Sunday morning. And then I got shuttled back to the campground where the race starts and ends and took a shower in the bathhouse in the campground because I had spent the night in a cabin there the night before the race. I have this 3-inch foam in the back of my vehicle that I can lay the back seat down and lay down, and I sleep a few hours, and then I drove 7 hours home. And then I got up on Monday and I do a little bit of walking I have a treadmill at home. And then on Tuesday, I was back out doing my 5 or 6 mile run.
Well, I mean, you've trained your body. You've done it so consistently for such a long time. Your cells, your mitochondria, everything's adapted to facilitate your lifestyle, right?
Yes. And it's hard to explain that to people that get a lot of overuse injuries because my running group, they're constantly preaching to me about you're going to end up getting hurt. And I haven't yet. So something I'm doing is working right.
You've got a secret superpower that I don't know, we need to study. But Bob, I so appreciate you explaining your whole background and just giving us so much useful information that we can take away and hopefully implement that can give us the kind of longevity that you've had in your running career.
I mean, when I see people like Bob finish Badwater at his age, Bob was there the year that I finished, but he had dropped out pretty early that year. But he's just such an incredible guy to begin with, just his personality. He's so encouraging, but he's an inspiration. And I just couldn't believe that he came back after, the year when he didn't make it before the cutoff and blew the cutoff away in that year that he finished after he had turned 80.
We had him on recently, and I've met him in person. He has a magnetic personality, very kind, very humble. So yeah, I definitely hope to see him have more success. He doesn't show signs of stopping.
Yes, very much so. But I not just the racing, but just out running and getting together with friends of mine and running. There's something about it, it's almost like a form of meditation for me. When I was still working, I would run an hour to an hour and a half in the evenings after work. And it was the only place where I could be totally unplugged because I had a very fast paced, demanding job. And I get out there and I get a mile or two in, and those endorphins kick in, and I get very relaxed. Um, I'm shut off from the rest of the world, and I can really do a review of what's going on in my life. And if there's some uncomfortableness that I have in a relationship with someone in my life, in that environment, I can get to a place where I can see what my part is in that and I can go back to them and make an amend if it's something I've done to cause that, which is in a lot of cases is what I have a part almost always. But a lot of times when I dig down there and get to the root cause, I find out it's something that I've done that's caused problems in a relationship.
I will speak to that. Running kind of forces you to self-reflect, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with that kind of introspection because it does force them to replay the tapes and evaluate if they had a role in, like you said, relationships perhaps, not going well. But, we need to embrace that. Definitely just truly disconnect and stop trying to distract ourselves. That's what I would always encourage people to seek out running as a time to do those kinds of things.
I don't think I've ever felt anything that gives me that feeling of running 100-mile ultra, battling with different issues throughout the race, being able to adjust, overcome, adapt to what's going on, and push myself and cross that finish line, and them to hand me that buckle is an unbelievable feeling. I got it when I was a Marine when I was young, and once I completed boot camp, I had that feeling, but I never had it again up until I started doing ultras. I think it really feeling like I am accomplishing something.
You telling me that you were a Marine makes a lot of sense now, given your just determination and grit with all your racing. Thank you for your service, first of all, but your being a Marine, they're very, very tough.
Thank you.
Right.
My mom loves it because she, when she was alive, she always talked about what a slob I was until I went off to the Marine Corps. And now I'm such a neat freak. I mean, people used to comment on my office at work. Everything had to be in its place, had to be neat. I hate clutter. I'm still like that today, and that's the result of the Marine Corps.
Well, staying organized and on top of nutrition, hydration, all those things, that kind of self-organization, it can't hurt, if you're running 100 miles, right?
Right.
So for people who want to follow you, know more about you, are you on social media at all, Instagram?
Just on Facebook. And yes, I have an Instagram page as well. I'm not really involved in social media as much. I do post on my Facebook page after I do a race, always with pictures of where I've been. My friends and family love that. And then I put a short description. I don't do race reports, a short description of my race. And I always do it, and I definitely do it if it's a DNF like this weekend. I learned early on that I don't want to hide from any of that. It's all a part of my experience. And no one has ever shamed me from DNFing a race, but the actual opposite of that, I think, is I feel much closer to people when I'm being real.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob. And I've learned a lot. I know everybody who's been listening has learned a lot, and I appreciate your authenticity.
Well, thank you very much. And definitely tell your sister I said hi, and I hope we cross trails again.